Okay, so today, guys, we are here with Aaron Barone from WSOP Poker and Upswing, and we are going to be taking a look at the 7 hands that defined my World Series of Poker main event this year. If you haven't already checked out the vlogs, I highly recommend that you do so before you watch this video. You'll be able to find the link to it somewhere over there. Day 1 and day 2, we did 2 days, and any spoilers that you don't want to see before you watch those, go and watch them now. But we did bust at the end of day 2. And there were several quite ridiculous hands that we had to endure along the way. And honestly, still not really sure about them. Loads of disagreements in the comments, which is great for the algorithm, so I don't really care. I still have, honestly, not really any clue. There's maybe one man that I know that could provide some light, shed some light, if you will. Aaron, how are we, lad?
Doing great. Excited to look at these hands.
So you are obviously on the stream team with me. You played the main event as well. And you had also some rather interesting hands. And you're coach for Upswing Poker. So what kind of stuff have you been doing on there?
So I've made some play and explains where people can see tournaments that I've played, final tables that I've won, and they can kind of follow along with each hand. I recently released a tournament module, which is basically just a fancy way of saying a 5-part series where I talk about common mistakes that players make in tournaments. So if you want to learn about that, you can go to Upswing and find that out. And yeah, just providing any knowledge or we'll call it wisdom that I can.
Well, let's see if you can provide some of that wisdom for me today. And maybe for some people that saw some of these hands and were probably quite predictably not sure what to do as well, because honestly, they're pretty wild. I know you've seen some of them like very briefly, but it'd be interesting to go into maybe a little bit more depth. So without further ado, Aaron, let's go and take our first hand, 3 hands into the main event, Ace King of Clubs. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. All right, Aaron. So in our first hand, as you'll know, we have 60,000 chips. We have 300 big blinds. And I imagine you'll want to know something a little bit about the opponents before each hand. So I will give you everything that I had at the time. Nothing that I learned later. You'll have everything I had at the time. And so for this hand, we are sitting down and by the way, guys, we're doing this like the only way we can obviously look at these hands is using the vlog. So we'll mute the vlog. My stupid face is in the corner. You know, you're used to my stupid face by now. There's 2 of them today. What can you do? So we have Ace King of Clubs on the button. We'll go through every stage with you, Aaron. It opens up +3 to 500 at 100, 200. The cut-off calls, and I'm on the button with Ace King of Clubs. What would you like to make this? Obviously going to be raising.
Yeah, definitely want to be raising here. Sizing can be, I don't know, between probably 11 to 15 bigs is fine. Like, you could even go bigger this deep. Like, I don't have a lot of experience playing 300 big blinds deep, but I do know the deeper you are, the bigger you want to make your 3-bet, right? So I don't think we're splitting hairs here on sizing, but you definitely want to be 3-betting here and picking a chunky size.
Yeah. Well, we go for something in the region of chunky, which is 2,200.
Sure.
And we get pretty quickly 4-bet to 10,200 by a man wearing a Brazilian style. He's got a Ralph Lauren blue hoodie on. He's got like Brazilian themed sunglasses and he's got headphones on. He doesn't look like he's here for chatting, and he's only literally just sat. He was actually late. And this is the first orbit. 10,200, which is about 50 fucking big blinds, Aaron, and it folds back to me. Is
that in real time? Like it almost looked like you put the bet up there and you had to edit that, right?
No, that's Dan cutting it to when I say it. So like I would have been like itching to say it. So no, it didn't happen instantly, but he, you know,
okay, because that looked really fast.
Yeah, no, there were. It wasn't a huge delay, but yeah, it was longer than that.
So there are certain tournaments where even at this stack depth, I'm willing to go broke with Ace King suited. And the main event is just not one of those tournaments, right? It's a great structure. It plays, like, it allows you to be really patient, and people will make, like, not only can you find good spots, but it's because people are going to make a lot of mistakes. And, you know, even if you get the money in here and you flip against queens or something, you're not really pumped about it.
No.
In my experience, I haven't seen people really getting crazy out of line level 1, hand 3, or hand 4. So automatically, I am very concerned.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking my options here are basically call or fold. Like, I think putting another bet, whether it's a, 5-bet fold, gross, 5-bet call, arguably worse. Like, so what were you thinking about?
I mean, I thought very strongly about folding, and then I decided that I was 33 years of age and called because I had Ace King suited. But I probably, if I could have this back, would fold.
Feels exceptionally nitty.
Yeah.
But, the only thing that I think that makes us want to call more is our read on the player. If the player, instead of being young-ish and, sporting the green gold type colors, was an older man with a trucker hat, I think we just put it right in the muck.
Yeah. True.
So yeah, I think again, like if people are watching the video, they're like, you're gonna fold ace king suited. It's like, I mean, what do we think his range is here? You know, yes, we have the right price against hands like jacks and queens. Does he have those enough? And if he has those, do we get paid when we actually hit our card, right? If it comes ace high, how much money do we get out of jacks and queens? So again, I'm really between call and fold. If there's one thing to sway it, you're in position, right?
Yeah.
So that might lean me towards a call.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I ended up calling, which I do. I do call. Sorry, guys. Sometimes my face will take the screen. That is just how it is. I have no way of dealing with that. So we do call after a brief and rather like it was like I spent a lot of time wondering if this was really my life. And then I did end up calling, and it's 10-5 deuce with a club, and our opponent bets, if I remember correctly, 9,000. What are you thinking?
If we called pre and we hit this flop, it's not the worst flop for us.
Yeah.
We're getting a good price. We're still in position. We have backdoor clubs. And if you think about your opponent's overall range here, like even if your opponent is aggressive, and especially if they're really good, if they're sitting here with a hand like kings on the turn or queens on the turn, and the turn was not a king or a queen, they're pretty unhappy. Like anybody who gets to the turn here, third hand of the main event, and doesn't have a set is going to feel pretty gross.
Yeah.
Right? And so even if you have aces, which you block, or kings, which you block, I think you might actually get to show down. A hand like queens or jacks, I think, again, checks a lot of turns because this pot is going to be massive. It's the third hand of the main event. People don't want to go broke. I actually think that, yeah, and given, I think how population plays, you actually might be able to see all 5 cards by just calling this turn, or this flop bet. You might be able to see, check turn. So I think if he bets 11 or 12, it's a fold. I think if you have ace king of hearts, it's a fold.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think given we've came this far and called the flop or the pre-flop 3-bet, I'd want to peel one in position.
I do agree with you. I think if we're going to fold, the time was to fold pre, and then once we're here, we kind of just have to play the hand as it presents itself, and this is clearly a call if it wasn't the main event. If I was playing a cash game 300 big blinds deep, you know, a few tables over in the green section of Paris, I'm never folding this hand, right? And in fact, I'm actually quite excited. So to fold here seems a little bit insane, but I did fold, so there's nothing more to say here, Aaron, but I do agree with you, I think.
Well, the main event is just a different animal entirely than other tournaments. I think even if you're playing like the closer 4 days after busting this, you're not folding flop.
Yeah.
It's just this exact tournament plays differently.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm just talking about here, like, I'm like, ugh, you know, what do I want to see on the turn? I think was one of the things that crossed my mind. Like, I don't know what I want to see. Like, do I want to see a king? Do I want to see an ace? Do I want to see a club and have to call like another half pot bet? So I do let it go. But there's a, you know, and I later learned that this guy probably wasn't getting too far out of line. Like, he generally just showed the goods a lot. Bit annoying, but we do fold, and I guess you're not overly miffed with my play. You think it's whatever, I guess.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay. Anyway, that sets us up very nicely for the reason I was all in at level 1 of the main event. Ready?
I'm ready.
Let's have a look. In hand number 2, my face looks suitably confused by the situation developing here, as we free-framed on. It's very flattering. The cutoff, who is a recreational, this is like Orbit 2 or Orbit 3, so that's all you're going to get. He's a clearly recreational, like middle-aged American guy. What you want. That's how I'd describe him. This is what you want. He opens the cutoff, and we have queens in the big blind. What do you want to make this?
Definitely 3-betting. Mm-hmm. It says okay, so he made it 2.5x, right?
Yeah, he made it 500. So, we're in the big blind at 100, 200.
I'm fine with anything between 1,700 and 2K.
Okay.
I think that's probably around when I'll make it. But again, like if someone comes in and is like, "Oh, I made it 2,100," is that a mistake? It's like, no, I made it 1,600. Is that a mistake? It's a little small, but no, like it's fine.
Yeah.
Anything in that range is very reasonable.
I think I'll go slightly bigger. I think I make it like 2,300. And the reason is,
it's a little
2,100. So about right.
Yeah.
And the flop is, he calls, and the flop is king, queen, 4 with 2 hearts. 4.5k in there, 45k effective stack. What's your sizing here?
My sizing with queens is different than my sizing with kings here. I know that a lot of people just want to have one size, but I don't. With queens, I want to pick a bigger size because I unblock the king, like king jack, king 10 type hands, even king 9 suited. People might even flat ace king.
Yeah.
Right. In addition to that, you know, there are a lot of draws possible on this sort of texture. So I'm going to pick a bigger sizing than maybe, I would say with kings, I might pick closer to 1/3. And with queens, I might pick either between like 40 and 60, depending on my opponent. percentage. And I think at this stack depth, you can actually go with a bigger size because it doesn't look as big. Like theory-wise, you might want to be more balanced. But as an exploit, at early levels against recreational players, when you have it, you probably want to pick bigger sizes.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you bet, let's say you bet 2,800 here or 1,800, out of his stack, it feels like the exact same, but it's obviously 5 big blinds more value.
Yeah. And it looked like this has a lot of continues here, right? I think he's just going to naturally have a lot of continues. Ace, jack, ace 10. Not going to be able to fold any of that. Flush draws. So I do decide to size up, actually. I believe I made this 2,300, but we'll just double check. Yeah, 2,300 from me. Sure. And I agree that it looks good. And the jack of clubs after villain calls on the turn. And interesting sizing choice here. I had some disagreements with Weasel about this one. What would you be thinking here?
Ace 10, I think, does call on the flop, almost all ace 10s. But I think when you get here with 10-9 of clubs, some people might just fold flop. Some people might not defend pre, right? So I don't think this card is as bad for you as it could be, right? So I think the hand like the turn like the 9 of hearts is way worse, right?
Yeah.
Even maybe even the low heart. So you have 42, pots 9.1. I think I'm probably picking around 5.8. Okay. 5.5. I wouldn't hate going smaller only because if you think 5.8 folds out a hand like Jack 10, if you think they're somehow folding it, I actually think his range of like, let's say King Jack, King 10, Jack 10, Ace Jack. I don't know if they're folding. Maybe Ace Jack folds a 5.8, but Ace Jack might fold the 3.8. So of his range that continues, I think whether it's 3.8 or 5.8, it's probably around the same. And so I might as well pick the bigger size.
Okay. I actually potted this turn.
So my concern with potting it is that you actually might get too many folds from hands that you're reasonably ahead of. Like obviously King 10 or Jack 10, I expect them to continue, but for a full pot, you might get both to fold.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. And if you're going to get those to fold, then what are you getting value from? It's like, oh, well, Jack 9 of hearts, King Jack, sure. But you've really condensed his range down by betting such a big size. And you'd prefer him to continue with a hand like Ace Jack, or for whatever reason, King 5 of diamonds is like drawing, pure dead.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Probably too big. I just figured that I'm not thinking exploitative enough in this spot. I'm literally just like, okay, I have ace 10, I have 10-9, I have all sets. You kind of don't, so pot. Which is kind of where I was coming from. But I like your reasoning a lot better, especially at this point in the main event where people are going to be like more reluctant to put chips in.
It's different if you're like level 4 of the main event and these are the stack sizes. Yeah.
Anyway, Aaron, cutoff makes it 22k.
Not great.
And now we now have probably a pure pot odds decision. I'll let you go first.
Well, I'm folding's out of the question.
Okay.
Because even if we range our opponent to have ace 10 and 10-9, it's not impossible for them to have pocket jacks, pocket fours. It's not impossible for them to have king jack. I imagine in the comments someone will say, LOL, he never plays king jack that way. And unless you've played with him, you don't really know. Right? People are prone to doing odd things, and everyone doesn't play their hand the same way. So we do beat those hands. There's always a chance, a non-zero, someone's bluffing. And we're getting more than 3-1 if he does have ace 10 or 10-9. So I think we definitely have to continue. And I believe I prefer a call, just because if you end up jamming here, maybe king jack finds a fold, versus if you call and then check river, they value jam. Or if he has a bluff, he certainly finds a fold with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I never really gave any consideration to all in. I was thinking about, do I get paid if I boat? Do I have the correct odds, direct odds to boat up and win this is just the pot that's there? I thought about it for like 2 minutes. I then contemplated my existence a little bit more, and I end up going for a call. There we go. We flick in 1 green chip, get some change, and bang off the 4 of spades in the river. The graphics are a little bit wrong. We have 23k back, 53k in the middle, and we are out of position. What would you like to do?
I want to check.
You want to check?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So if we check and our opponent has a bluff, we give them a chance to put the rest in, right? And so I think that's one of the ways we get paid. And the other is if you end up jamming here and you're targeting a hand like ace 10 or 10-9, those hands might call, but those hands probably bet if you check.
I decided he would snap check back a straight. I thought he was mostly going to have a straight, almost always, on the turn. And I thought that he would check it back if I checked.
I think that you might be putting your own thoughts about how your own range looks into your opponent's head, because you think in your head, you're like, how do I have worse than a straight here?
Yeah.
Like, what do I, and if you do have worse than a straight, I'm trying to think how you ever have that. Is it king, queen, and that never calls anyway, right? So sometimes by doing that, we're trying to give our opponents too much credit. So it's possible that he just checks back a straight, but he also might just think like, I have a straight here. He's got a little bit left. I'll just put him in. Hope he calls me. Or again, if he has a bluff and he thinks, man, he's got a little bit behind, I'm going to put him in. And so you get value potentially from both of those. And when you jam, it's just you're praying that he has a hand that he can't fold. And that's possible. But again, I think that those sort of hands are still capable of betting river when you check. Okay. Plus, you have a very bluffable face, and you want to give people a chance to try that.
This is true. So I decided, after having pissed away that, like, whatever it was, 10k in the other hand, he was going to be left with chips left if I jammed. So I decided to jam, thinking even if he has a straight, he probably won't fold it because he's still going to have chips there. He's not out of the main, which is the main thing that people don't want to be, is out the main. So I decided to jam, thinking that he would probably just call a straight, knowing he's still in. But I do think that if I was even in stacks, I still would have donked, but I would have donked like a third pot. I would have bet like 10k, maybe 15k, if that, purely because of the dynamic of the main event. But I don't know how you feel about that. I think people like in this spot, when they lead into me, aren't bluffing. Yeah. Like for me, if I'm in his spot, I'm thinking, how do you have a bluff? Yeah. King, queen. And yeah, and even turning king, queen into a bluff. Yeah. And that'd make a really fun like vlog hand review. Yeah. But it's just not as likely as all the other holdings that beat a straight. Yeah. So he was extremely upset. It announced that he had the nut straight and the nut flush draw. So he had ace ten of hearts and did end up folding. So kind of a little bit of both of what we were talking about. Like no one wants to bust the main. Yeah, I was very sad not to get value here, but also extremely happy not to be left with 20k and having to check fold the river, because that's what I would have done if it had come brick. Yeah, poor guy. He was ahead for a whole one street. Yeah, I know. Unbelievably sick. Completely unfair. Yeah. Ridiculous flop though. Like ace ten of hearts against queens on this board. Come on. Like, so it's a pretty wild start. So you like checking river. You like smaller on turn. All seems pretty fair and reasonable. I definitely got a little bit out of line with my turn sizing, and I prefer donking smaller or checking than what I did. I think it gets too many folds. But again, as we're going to see later on, guys, making too many assumptions about what people want to fold isn't really going to get you anywhere. So you need to think more logically like Aaron's doing than what I'm doing, which is more assumptively. So that is the end of hand 2. Pretty interesting start for me. Half an hour in. We've already been all in. We've already had ace king of clubs, called 50 big blind, raised pre-flop. Now we have one more hand on day 1, which is pretty interesting against the same player from hand 1. So let's go and take a look at that. Hand number 3, guys, and we have ace king. We have ace king, and we make it 500, and the same guy from hand 1 makes it 1300. We are +3 against cutoff. I decided never to 4-bet. I actually considered 4-betting. I was like, fuck this guy. I might 4-bet. And then I decided to call. You okay with that? I'm fine with it. Again, being this deep, I think you're not going to have as many 4-bets. Also, in this tournament, I think at my table, I've played twice now. I don't think I've seen a 4-bet in the main event, like level 1 or level 2, without aces. Yeah. Like from anybody. Yeah. It makes it good though. Against weaker players, you do actually want to play some smaller pots here. I mean, you don't want to 4-bet fold ace king here. You really don't even want to 4-bet get called, played out of position, but okay, sure. Yeah. I think flatting's very reasonable. Yeah. So we do call, and we see a rather spicy looking king queen 4, another king queen 4. This time with 2 spades. We check, and he bets 3k into 4.1. Don't love it, but your hand's a pretty pure call. Not only do you have top pair, top kicker, you have a backdoor spade draw. Yeah. All right, let's see a turn. We do call. We give no consideration to anything else, but I'm actually just actively displeased already. Turn is a 5 of spades, give me nut flush draw. No donks, I imagine. I don't think so. Like, I think you could say, even if in a theory world you have more flushes, I don't think it's that many more. Yeah. And he still has kings and queens, which you may or may not have, depending on how you set up your 4-betting range. You also have a really strong bluff catcher that's under-repped. So I think you want to be checking. This exact hand anyway. I do decide to check. There is 7.1k in there, 10.1k going to the turn, and we check and are met with 6,500. So it's about pretty much 2/3 pot. Just another call. Yeah. As I said, under-repped
bluff catcher, could river the nuts, could still just have the best hand. I wouldn't be surprised if you're chopping here a lot too.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. There's my face, not happy, but we do flick in a call. And the river is the 5 of diamonds. We check for a third time, and we are this time met with less than half pot to the tune of 10,500, it looks like.
I'm pretty unhappy about it. Just playing ace king out of position is not fun. 300 big blinds deep. Like this, obviously there are a lot of unfun spots in this tournament.
Yeah.
When you're this deep and out of position. But if you think about how this board could have ran out for you, this is really good. You block nut flushes. So if he has a hand like, he can't have ace jack of spades or ace 3 of spades, which are, potential 3-betting hands. You block kings. Like the only hand you're really afraid of is aces, which you also block, and pocket queens, which, you don't block that, but you can't block every value combo your opponent has.
Yeah.
So, feels like a side call, hope to chop / maybe he's bluffing.
Yeah, so I did cycle. Couple of things. So firstly, I need to win less than 25% of the time here. I think I chop catch as well, probably, maybe. So I do end up calling. I don't think folding is too much of a consideration here. What do you think about jamming?
I think if you jam here, you're called by exactly queens.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing. I was actually thinking if I had king queen in the spot, would I turn my hand to a bluff?
Is that a better bluff, do you think, than ace king with a spade? Because we want him to fold the ace-high flush, right, if we jam.
Yeah. I don't think he's calling flushes if you jam, so I think I want to have blockers to the 2 hands that would call me, which are pocket kings, pocket queens. I had said you only get called by queens, but that's because I was discounting the possibility of kings because you have a king. Yeah. But he can certainly still have kings. So you would then be using king, queen as a bluff to move him off king, anything but kings or queens, which includes ace-high flushes, which includes pocket aces with a spade even.
Yeah.
Even if he had ace 5 for some reason, he gets here, he's not going to probably call a jam. The funny thing, though, is that there are these assumptions that people are only going to stack off in the main with the nuts. And then ultimately there's a hand that gets posted on some poker reporting site where somebody stacked off with third pair and everyone's like, why didn't he just wait for the nuts? So it does kind of go both ways.
Yeah. And
knowing your luck, if you jammed, he has queens and you're out. So
yeah. Even the main event at level 1, if he has queens, I don't think he snaps. That's how sick this tournament is at this level. Because I can have kings. I could have kings. Anyway, I do end up calling and he shows me red aces. So we do lose that one back again to the same geezer from before. Very sad about that. But yeah, basically, the rest of my day 1 was a little bit calmer. There wasn't really anything too interesting to speak of. But those 3 hands were incredibly tough spots to be in at level 1. You're trying to just make your way into the tournament and you get all that shit. Wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, there were many times during level 1 I looked down and the first card was pretty decent. And I'm like, well, I hope this next card is either amazing or not even close to being good.
Yeah.
I really don't want to have too many tough spots as you kind of acclimate to the tournament. And unfortunately, you were faced with 3 tough ones. Yeah.
I'd say that freeze frame of my face is probably indicative of how I was feeling towards that entire day. So we are going to go on now to day 2, which is arguably even friskier than day 1. So I just realized, guys, that before we get to day 2, there was a semi-important hand that I might have done some folding with some kings pre-flop. So we might look at that one first before we go to day 2. I would be surprised to get this through, Aaron, but we will see. Have you seen this hand, Aaron?
I have not seen the hand, no.
You haven't seen the hand. Okay, so this is going to be fun for you. Let me set the stage because obviously I'll be talking about that on there. And these things are really important. So the dealer is dealing, as she does, and she flicks a card to under the gun. I can't remember it's the first or the second card, but it flies off the table. It's reinstated to the table, to the top of the deck, ace of hearts. Okay? So our ace of hearts is our burn card. The under the gun player is then on them. They shake their head and they fold. Okay? It folds around to the hijack, who makes it 1,200. And Seth, who's the guy on my right, who I've been talking to all day, really nice guy, hasn't been out of line at all. Not once. Not seen him. In fact, I'd seen him, or had I seen him at this point? There was a hand where he didn't 3-bet 10s out the small blind versus cutoff. And I don't know if I'd seen that at this point, though. Anyway, he 3-bets to 4,200 and I have kings in the big blind. What size would you like to make this? We're at 300, 500, 500. So this is just before dinner.
He makes it about 8.5. In position here, got to the big blind. It's rare you say that. I think I might make it pretty small.
Okay.
I think I might make it. So he makes it 8, or say over here he makes it 4.
4.2.
So maybe 10.2.
Okay. I think I end up with 11.
Fine.
Let me just double check. So we've got kings, we reach down, and we make it 11-6. 11-6, yeah. And the hijack folds, and Seth jams instantaneously. When I say instantaneously, I mean instantaneously. And it's back to us. We have about 45k left, which is just under 100 big blinds. The total pot is worth I have about 120 big blinds to start the hand. And it's over to you, Aaron. Would you like to call or would you like to fold?
So one of my fears was getting kings early in the main event and getting a bunch of action.
Yeah.
Right? Getting queens, like fold, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever folded kings pre. Maybe I have, who knows. But I didn't want to have that situation happen. It looks like you have that here. It is not as early, right? Because, you have about 100 big blinds.
It's not 300 yet.
Which is hooray for not having a bigger stack, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about this hand that I think sways me towards putting the money in is an ace was exposed. So there's going to be fewer combinations of pocket aces, and I think people are going to be a little more emboldened with pocket queens. So because of that, I would put the money in. I think their range is going to be, just with the card removal, slightly weaker. And if the ace wasn't exposed, I think it's a whole nother discussion. But with that one exposed, I'm going to put the money in and hope that I'm ahead / hit a king.
Do you think that he would snap jam without an ace exposed? Is that a thing that people would do? Like, it felt like it was so quick. It was like he'd already decided, because obviously it had to go for someone else. It was so quick, he'd already basically done it before my fucking 4-bet was in there. Do you think that says anything? Does it make you change any of your thinking at all?
It actually makes me feel like pocket aces are less likely.
Okay.
Like, just because when people have pocket aces or when they have the nuts and they're facing a raise, they kind of want to pretend as if they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And give off some like, ooh, I don't know if this is the one, and then they put the money in, like, if you got it, you got it kind of thing. So I think it makes it slightly weaker. But again, if you don't have those two things of the card being exposed and this opponent, perhaps giving off a physical tell, I could get behind a king's fold. To be honest, I'd kind of told myself, unless a spot is super obvious, I'm just going to go with it, right? And there are certain players in my early table where I'm like, well, if I have kings and they have aces, I'm not going broke.
Yeah.
And there are certain ones where I thought, if I have queens and they have aces, I'm going broke. So it just sort of depends on that. I would imagine, by the way, if this player was the other player from earlier, the player in the hoodie, who you clashed with before in many 3-bet pots, you'd probably just instantly put the money in.
I mean, that geezer only showed me aces. So I don't know.
Maybe not.
He only had aces. Every time I called, he had fucking aces. He probably had aces in the first hand as well. Anyway, I was very upset. I asked the dealer if she was really sure that was the ace of hearts on top of her deck, and she told me that she was. So after about 5 minutes, I think I do end up folding. As you can see here, the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. As you can imagine, I took it really well, Aaron. I said, everyone go for dinner. There's no point. I don't know how I'm ever going to do this. So I literally was just complaining for ages, and then Mark said that he had no idea, didn't know what to do. Eventually, I do fold, and I am shown the hand, Aaron. What do you think?
I think you're being shown.
There it is. 2 kings.
Oh, well, I see it now.
The other 2 kings. So I thought 3 combos of aces and 1 combo of kings, and I don't like my odds against those hands, so I folded. You're saying maybe queens. A few people in the comments said maybe queens, and I gave them hell. I'm not going to give you hell because you're much better than me, but I don't think it's queens. And I have since confirmed to be results based, but I added him on Instagram because we were quite friendly, and he told me he not in a million years he would have done it in queens with queens. So
and that's part of the reads that you have of playing with this person, and things that I don't have. Like, I'm seeing it, as a snapshot.
Absolutely, sure.
But one thing about the main event that, obviously, again, your survival is really important. Your tournament life is really important. If you get a big stack early, like day 1, day 2 type stuff, I think you can definitely push around weaker players or scared players and win a lot of small pots. And so I actually think that if this spot happens to me on a day 1, day 2, I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
And I just realized the equity I have when I have a big stack is going to be so much greater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if he has 1 combo of kings and 3 of aces, then it's
probably
a good
fold. But maybe he only has kings. Ooh.
Then it's just always a chop. But then you're probably losing that run out.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on my brand. My brand would do very well off of losing that run out, to be fair.
It's better to lose, actually. Yeah.
It may be better to lose, especially if you're not going to make the money. So that's going to do it for the first day of hands that Aaron's going to review for us. We are going to look at a couple more, 4 more to be precise, from day 2, and that will include the biggest bluff of my life. Can't wait to see what Aaron thinks about that. Aaron, thanks for coming along and doing this with us. I appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one, guys, for day 2.